Hello and welcome to you on a Monday evening. I realize it's late for a lot of people on the other side of the country. And I don't expect there'll be a lot of people online, but of course, if there are, that'll be great. What I want to talk to you about today is some thoughts I've been having about the goddess Iduna, the Norse goddess of immortality. And I'm going to share with you a mantra for her. This is a chant that you can use. It's very safe. I've tested it out. It's very healing and very wonderful. And so I will give that to you in this video so that you can use that in your own practice. It's a great way to connect to the power of the moon. It's a great way to connect to healing on an emotional level, on a physical level. It's very healing in general, and Iduna for me is one of the most benevolent, the most user-friendly deities I've ever worked with. And so we're going to be talking about Iduna. I'm going to be sharing with you my experience of her. I'm also going to be sharing with you her name as it pertains to the runes and as it pertains to Indo-European root seed language. I'm going to be sharing with you in her name the what are called the seed sounds, which are in and of themselves, when you chant them, they have a lot of power. But I can't say whether or not this is how her name came about in the Norse, but it certainly has a very strong coincidental connection with not only the runic powers that are within her name, but also with the original Indo-European root religion having to do with the moon and with healing and with immortality, the ambrosial nectar. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I'll briefly skim over some of the mythology surrounding her. I'm not going to make this a very mythology heavy teaching this time, but we'll get into that. And of course, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Again, I don't know how long I'm going to be on tonight because it's a Monday and it's all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I really wanted to talk about this while I had some time, because I'm probably going to be busy over the next couple of days. So I wanted to get this out there. So first, let's talk about Iduna, the goddess. So Iduna is the wife of Bragi. Bragi is the god of poetry. And so there's a very interesting connection here. Now, I am being very clear that it is my absolute belief and experience that Iduna is a goddess of the moon. Although you don't see that a lot, it's not in the mythology, she's not seen as a goddess of the moon. It's not saying she's not a goddess of the moon, but that is absolutely my experience. Now, we can just look at it from a symbolic point of view, because the moon has a lot to do with healing and with life force energy, especially nurturing life force energy. The moon is represented in many mythologies as sorry, I'm just going to turn this off so I don't have to listen to it beep again. Okay, so the moon is representative of the ambrosial nectar of immortality. And so we see this with the thunder gods. Now, for those of you who may be new to my channel, again, I won't repeat myself ad infinitum, but the thunder gods are gods of the mind. They are gods of ambrosial nectar. They are also gods of, they're not gods of the moon per se, because they are gods of thunder and lightning. But within their names, what you find out is that they are the lords of the moon. So, for instance, Thunar, the Germanic god of thunder, of where we get the name Thor. His original name was Thunar. We have within that that he is the Lord of the Moon. And we have, of course, the same scenario with Indra. Thunar's name is Thunar. So there we have that root of Thu, and that is in the name Iduna. So in English we pronounce it Idun or Iduna, but I believe that the Norse is showing I believe, an accurate pronunciation, which is Iduna. The name is Iduna. So we're there again, once again, we have that root Thu. And Thu is connected to the drop of ambrosial nectar. It's connected to the moon. And so we have that, and I'll get into her name a little later on. But again, with the other thunder god in the Vedic tradition, we have Inthura. So very similar. It's the same name as Thunar. Slightly different words and pronunciations, but we have that same seed sound of Thu. As I've said before, Thunar is more of a lunar thunder deity because his name simply is Lord of the Ambrosial Nectar, Lord of the Moon, Thunar. Inthura is more of a solar deity because in his name we have In, which is full or bright. We have Thu, which is drop of ambrosial nectar or the moon. And we have Ra, which is fire, but it's also the king. And it's also the ray of the sun. And so we have that same scenario with Iduna. Now, I'm going to be talking to I'm going to let a little time go on so that in case people come on and they have any questions, we can go over that with them. But Iduna, let's just talk about her mythology. She is the goddess, and she is, at least from what I've seen in my research of her, she is always seen as a young maiden. So we have this idea of youth, and of course the healing power that comes with youth. And she is the guardian of the magic apples, the apples of immortality. Now, it's interesting that we have that fruit symbology with them because, in the Garden of Eden, the Abrahamic tradition, the apple is what we think of when we think of the forbidden fruit. But the reality is that the Abrahamic tradition does not say what the fruit is. So the idea that we have simply assumed that the fruit is an apple, this comes from the European understanding of what apples symbolize. So apples symbolize eternal life. And as the Catholic Church was coming into Northern Europe and was wiping out the indigenous shamanic religion of the indigenous Northern European people, the polytheist shamanic Germanic tribes, they ran up against this myth of the apple being the fruit of immortality. So again, Christianity is one of these religions that has to compete with everything else. So when Christianity was unable to destroy a polytheist symbol, when people held on to it very strongly, if the church couldn't get rid of it, then they would hijack it and use it for their own purposes. So we see this with the Christmas tree. There's nothing about the Christmas tree that has anything to do with the Abrahamic tradition of Jesus. It represents the Germanic and, of course, many, many other indigenous polytheist traditions about the tree of life. And so at the solstice, the winter solstice, we worship the tree of life and all that other stuff. I could get into that. And so the same thing here with the apples. The apples represented immortality. And so when the Christians had to compete against this, and of course they wanted to be the sole repository of immortal life through their belief in Jesus and all that. So they turned the apple into something evil. So this is why you see the apple in the Garden of Eden mythology. It didn't come from the Old Testament. It came from Europeans who wanted to find a way to take, first off, they couldn't get rid of the myth of the apples of immortality. So, and of course, this was seen as something good by the indigenous people. And so the church had to take it and turn it into something evil, so they gave it to the snake. And of course, to eat the apple was to disobey Jehovah in the Abrahamic tradition. And so to look towards the apples as a sign of immortality would have been unacceptable. So since they couldn't get rid of it, they put it into that myth. And so that's why we have that myth there. But she was the guardian of the apples of immortality, and as I understand it, she had a box that was magic, and within that box there was a certain number of apples, and no matter how many apples she took out, there was always the same amount of apples in there. So this gives you the idea about the ambrosial nectar, this infinite flowing, healing, ever rejuvenating ambrosial nectar. And you know, I love apples, and so if you love apples like I do, then that beautiful taste that apples can have, to me, you know, represents that you know. And again, when we're talking about pre-industrialized people, apples would have been not only, you know, good apples, of course, would have been very sweet. They would have tasted even sweeter than they do to us because we have so much sugar in our diets that we get numb. But anybody who, you know, lives a purely organic diet, you know, doesn't have processed sugar. You only get your sugar through fruit juices or honey or things like that. When you have a really good apple and you taste it, that apple is so sweet, and it does, you know. And again, we've got it in our modern mythology. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. So we have this intuitive understanding that apples bring health and healing, and the sweetness of the apple is symbolic of the ambrosial nectar of the gods. So in our tradition, at least in my ethnic tradition, the gods, they ate the apples that contain the ambrosial nectar. So this is Iduna. So I'm going to check and see if there's anybody online and if there are any questions, and if so, I'll take some, and if not, I'll get into looking at her name in terms of the runes, looking at her name in terms of how it connects to the ancient Indo-European root words for ambrosial nectar and moon and healing and all that kind of stuff. So let me do that first. Let me just check and see who's online. We got 15 people even on a Monday. Hello to everybody. Okay. Hi, everybody. So let's see. All right. Very good. Okay, so we've got a few people online. So let's go ahead and just start looking at her name, Iduna. You know, and I just have to say, I've been working with her very recently, and I find her to be so healing. I mean, there's just, you know, some deities can be challenging, and some deities can be intense and energizing, and but she is just so kind and so sweet and so approachable, and you know, there's just I think, you know, and again, as you know, it's, you have to look at somebody's chart to really see which deities and which planets want to work with somebody. And as it turns out, in my chart, not only am I, of course, I'm a worshiper of the moon, as you know, but her name Iduna vibrates with my ascendant of Leo, so that works really well. But I also think that she'll work with anybody. You know, some deities, obviously, as I've said, you got to kind of be careful, but I think she's one that anybody can work with. So let's go ahead and just take a look at her name. Let me see, which one do I want to start with here? I've got a few here. So as I said, I'm going to be giving a mantra for her, which I've been using. It's really, really wonderful and healing. I think it's very, very all-purpose. She's telling me to just go ahead. She's having me do things backwards. Normally I have to go. I like to do things a certain way, but she's having me do things backwards today. So she just wants to give. So we're just going to get straight into the mantra then. So here's the mantra. I'll go ahead and explain it to you, and if you're able to, write it down. If not, wait until it's archived and you can come back and look at it. But here's the mantra that she has allowed me to use for her. So there it is. Lam vam ram yam hum iduna ya nama. So you don't have to get it right. You don't even have to get it perfect. You can be really off. She is one of those deities that you just have to have just the slightest desire to connect with her, and she's right there. She's just so wonderful and so healing. So those seed sounds, lam vam ram yam hum, are the seed sounds for the first five chakras. They also are the five elements. So lam is earth, vam is water, ram is fire, yam is air, and hum is ether. And so when you chant lam vam ram yam hum, you are balancing the first five chakras and the first five elements. And so by doing this mantra, lam vam ram yam hum, connected with her, it brings a balancing to all of the five chakras. In fact, just talking about it, I'm getting filled with this really blissful, wonderful feeling from that. So you've got lam vam ram yam hum, and then you have Iduna ya nama. So her name is Iduna. Excuse me. And then you have Aya at the end, and that is when you're dealing with ancient Indo-European language, that ending of Aya has to do with the power of. So this is saying you're asking for Iduna to come and balance the first five chakras, the five elements within the body, to give you balance and healing, and then to ask for her power. And Nama means, actually the word Nama means name, but it's also the way to say I bow to. But really what you're saying is you're asking for, when you have Nama mantras, you're asking for the power of whatever the deity is that you're working with to fill your aura. So lam vam ram yam hum iduna ya nama is a way to just fill not only your chakras and your body, but also your aura with this very healing, beautiful, sweet, delicious power of the goddess of immortality and of the moon. So let's talk about the name Iduna there, because that is also important to the mantra. So before I get into that and what that name does when you chant Iduna, by the way, that's just another, you can also just chant Iduna, Iduna. And what that'll do is give you a lot of power within yourself. That will stimulate the Kundalini in the spinal column, and it will give you the power of the feminine aspect of the ambrosial nectar. So remember that Thunar, right? His name is Thunar, the Lord of Thu, right? And so now we have to look at what Idunaya is. Let me see if I can find it here. Where did I put it? I think this is it. So let's look at her name when we break it up into Indo-European seed sounds. So you can clearly see where I've made the connection that she is a lunar goddess, because Thu is the Proto-Indo-European word for the ambrosial nectar, which was synonymous with the moon. There's the moon itself, and then there's the nectar of the moon, which is Thu. And so she has that in the middle of her name. Now, I have no idea, to be honest with you. In the Norse, as I understand it, Iduna means ever young or ever restoring, something like that. So I don't know how people have come up with that. I only know at this point, when I look at those syllables, it's very clear that that is exactly what she is. So whether that's a coincidence or whether that was something that came out organically, I'm not sure. But ultimately I don't care, because when it comes to sounds have their own vibration and their own power. So if it was a coincidence, it was a divine coincidence. So let's talk about the first syllable of E. So we put an I there, and E is the sound of the power of Kundalini within the spinal column. And so if you wanted to run energy up the spinal column and give the power of Shakti that goes directly to your sense of self, then you could simply chant E and imagine it moving up and down your spine. Now, you kind of want to be careful with that. You don't want to do that for too long unless you're prepared for it, because then you can really kind of blow out your circuits. But this is the power of E. Now, let me share with you something. I didn't write it down. I wanted to, but I didn't. But this seed sound of E is actually older than the Vedic Om. So, as you know, the NG sound, that M at the end of Om, is actually NG. By the way, that's also true with the seed sounds here. Lam, Vam, Ram is actually pronounced Lang, Vang, Rang. So that M is actually an NG. Lam, Vam, Ram, Yam, Hum. But when you have the sound E, which has to do with the Shakti inside the spinal column, which has to do with the identity, then when you want to empower that, you put an NG sound. So just like the way we pronounce the seed, the rune ING, right? Same kind of thing. You pronounce that same thing. When you simply chant ING like that, you have now given additional power to that seed sound. So why am I telling you this? A lot of people don't know this. Very few people, even in India, know this. The original seed sound was not Om. That came later. That is the seed sound for the universal consciousness, which came a little bit later in the Vedic period. But originally, the first seed sound that was chanted to connect with the universe was this sound ING. ING. Part of the reason for that is because Indra was the god of the Vedics. And when you wanted to tap into the internal essence of Indra, you chanted ING. This is a rule. I'm giving you a secret here. You can do this with any deity. You take their first syllable and you add an NG to the end of it. So, for instance, if somebody wanted to worship me, Mike, you could chant mine, mine. That would tap you into the essence of Mike, the essence of me. So when you want to tap into the essence of Indra, you chant ING. So that's also going to tap you into the essence of Iduna, because that's her first initial. So when you have E, right? Now, we're not making that into a seed sound in her name. So directly after E is Thu, and then Na. So Thu, as you know, is the root for the ambrosial nectar of immortality. And then we have Na. Now, Na, when you put it onto many names in the Germanic, it gives a feminine quality to it. So that's why she's Iduna. The Na is what gives her feminine essence. Now, na is a very powerful seed sound. Na has to do with negation. So the original, we say no now, N-O. But that's because the Old English and the Norse oftentimes would take ah sounds and then change them to o sounds. Like you hear people today say osatru, and what they're saying is asatru. So like in the word for moon was manne, but the Old English pronounced it mone. So we have an ah, we turn it into an o. So that's why we say no now, but originally that was na. When you wanted to negate something, you put na in front of it. Na became ne. We still do it now today. It's the I's and the nays. Ne. We still do it. This is one of the things I've learned about language is that many of the very old words are hidden within what we think is slang. And so like when somebody says nah, right? Nah. We see that as a slang. We don't treat it like it's a word. But it's actually the original word for no. That's why little kids do it. That's why when we're not talking to somebody in a formal manner and we're just sitting around talking, we go, nah, I don't like that. Instead of no, because that's the original way to say no. But let's go a little further. Na has the energetic connotation of emptiness. So that's why it's negation. It puts emptiness. But emptiness, as you know, is not nothing. Emptiness is actually the primordial essence of anything before it is turned into manifestation. So this is Gnungagat, the power of Gnungagat, the power of the feminine. And everything is born from the feminine. So, like the word sunna. Sunna, actually, when you break it up, sunna, is talking about the feminine internal aspect of the sun. That's why our ancestors worshipped Sunna as a woman, because Sunna means the internal aspect of the sun. And as you know, the sun gets all of its light and its heat and its power. At the center of it, there's so much gravity. The gravity crushes the hydrogen atoms and creates nuclear fusion. That's the power of Na. So when we talk about the rune Nauthiz, Nauthiz is that power. That's why I keep saying, those of you who work with me, if the Nauthiz rune comes up, I tell you that Nauthiz is giving you the experience of being trapped, of feeling need, but it's actually on the verge of exploding and creating something brand new. That's the need fire. So while we're on that, let's go ahead and take a look at that. Hopefully you've been able to digest everything I've just thrown at you. But let's take a look again at the runes of her name and the connections to that as well. And then we'll move on from there. So you can see it's, if we just said Idu, that would be the, if we wanted to just talk about the runes, it would be the protection of the self, because Isa is the self. So Idu is the protection of the self, it's the nurturing of the self, because Thu is also the ambrosial nectar. But then we have Na in there. So that number one says we're talking about a goddess. We're talking about Shakti. We're talking about the power of the feminine. And as you know, anybody who is familiar with me and my work, the power of the feminine is everything. And without the power of the feminine, there is no masculine power. As a man, I have a lot of power, but my power it comes from the feminine. That's why I seek that out. I seek out the power of the feminine. Anytime that I've had classes, like where I've taught drum classes or shamanism classes, you'll see that in my classes there's probably 70% women and 30% men. And I'm happy with that, because I love to be surrounded with the power of the feminine. So this is the power that is given to that. Iduna. Iduna. That Iduna power says that you are defending, protecting, and empowering and nurturing with Thu to the self, which is the Shakti, that is the Kundalini power within inside the spinal column. And then we give it this explosive power of the sun, Na, Sunna, Iduna. So she's a very powerful goddess, but she is the goddess that gives eternal life, eternal healing. That's why when she opens up her box full of apples, no matter how many apples she pulls out, there's the same number of apples there. That's the Na. The Na is the emptiness from which it just keeps manifesting, it just keeps creating. And so this is why, without her, let me just put it this way. Without her, the gods would die. That's how powerful she is. We hear so much about Odin and Thor and Frey and Freyja, and of course we should. Loki, we hear about all of these gods. Tiu, very, very important deities, but they are all nothing without Iduna. Nothing. None of them can exist. Because without her, to have that magical power of Na within her, that magical box that she carries, the gods would all die. They would all get old and die. So she's a really, really wonderful deity to work with. So I think I talked through all of the really interesting things that I wanted to talk about. We could go over them again. Let me just put up this picture that I love so much. Literally, I could meditate just on this picture. I'll check and see if there are any questions, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, so again, remember the best way, if you're new to my channel, the best way to interact with me is to leave me a question. I can't prevent you guys from talking to each other. I kind of encourage it, but it helps me when I can scroll through and I can see the questions and answers. So I only saw one question in there, which was, who asked that question? Emerson's... Wait, no, there's two questions. Wait, there's that one. There's another one that I saw. Let me back up. Where did I see this? Somebody was, I guess I can't seem to find it here. Somebody was asking me, what does it mean to work with her, quote unquote. Well, to work with it, there's multiple ways to work with a deity. I happen to be working with her with that mantra that I just gave you early on. I have things within my chart. This is interesting to know. So when it really comes to working with a deity with mantra, you can do this with ritual as well. Each one of us is tuned to a slightly different frequency. We have our own specific frequency, which when I look at your Vedic chart, I can see exactly how each planet, and therefore each deity, wants to work with you. So for example, in my Vedic chart, I'm a Leo, and I have Moon in my first house. So that means when I want to worship Moon, and Iduna is a goddess of the Moon, when I want to worship Iduna, she wants to be worshipped with fire. Because Sun is the Lord of Leo, so that means the Moon sits in a fire sign. Now, Leo, the sun, the direction for the sun is the east. So for me, to get the most out of working with the moon, I need to face east and have some kind of fire, whether that's a candle or even a bonfire. She would love that for me. And then you do whatever your ritual is. For me, a real simple one is just to simply face east, light a candle, and chant to her or talk to her whatever offerings I want to give to her. So for me, I'm using this mantra, which is so wonderful. Lam vam ram yam ham Iduna yana. Now, I've kind of shown you how free and giving she is, because normally you're not supposed to tell people when you're doing a ritual or when you're working with a vow, because it stimulates the ego. But there's just no ego with her whatsoever, and she's made it really clear. She wants she wants to give everything to anybody. She's not like, you know, a lot of deities and a lot of different things. You know, you have to jump through some hoops and follow a bunch of rules, and that's really important. She's not like that. She just gives. She gives freely without any thought of recompense whatsoever. You know, that's, anyway, I won't get into it. But so I'm not supposed to tell you normally, but I'm telling you now because she's that way. So I think I answered that question. Emerson's Coffee, Bike, and Rum Shop's question. Is it okay to chant this mantra along without personal mantra? I don't know what that means. Is it okay to chant this mantra along with our? I think our means our. Technically, you're not supposed to mix. So I happen to be between mantras right now. I'm not going to say no, because again, she doesn't say no. She never says no. So just from her, yes, you can chant to her anytime. This is the thing about the moon. The moon loves all of the planets. You know, like for instance, you know, Jupiter and let's put another. Jupiter and Saturn are enemies, right? Mars and Saturn are big time enemies. So you wouldn't want to like chant a Mars mantra and then chant a Saturn mantra in the same day, because that's. But the moon loves everybody, and even if the ones that don't love the moon, which is like for instance Mercury rebels against the moon, but the moon loves Mercury. Loves Mercury. That's why, by the way, Iduna is married to Bragi. Bragi is Mercury, because he's the poet. And so that's kind of why you get this feeling about, I can't speak for anybody else, and I don't know that I've read it, but I've always kind of had this feeling that Bragi sort of like, kind of, you know, he's not really into his wife all that much, you know. But that's because that's what the way Mercury is. Mercury rebels against the moon. The intellect rebels against the mind, but the mind loves the intellect. The mind wants to surround the intellect and empower the intellect, and that's why she is the Shakti of Bragi, because any male power, whether it be a human or whether it be a god, that male power, in order to be successful, needs Shakti. And this is why in ancient traditions, the queen sat on the left. The queen had all the power. Now the king stood there and he took all the credit, but make no mistake, she had all the power. And it was because she gives him the power to be the king that he is. That's why in chess, which one of the pieces has all the power? The most important one is the queen. This is telling you exactly the truth of the energetic nature of things. So even though, you know, Bragi is the one that stands up and he does, she's the one that empowers him. And I won't get into it, but there's that one myth where, you know, where Loki pulls everybody's covers, and you know, he pulls her covers, and she doesn't attack him, and she's trying to tell everybody, listen, let's not fight, let's get along. That's the power of the moon. The moon loves everybody. So this is one of the wonderful things about Iduna. So let's see if there are any other questions here. Okay, so I can't really pronounce that name. Anyone here look into Gothic? Okay, so you're not really asking me a question. So I don't, and even if I did, I don't have the answer to that question anyway, so I can't answer that. Looking for the questions. Yeah, so again, Frater, you're probably new to my channel. So understand that all planets have both a masculine and a feminine. If you got here early on, you heard me talk about why our ancestors called the sun Sunna. Sunna, that na gives it the power. It means the internal power of the sun, which through nuclear fusion creates the power of the sun. But the masculine power of the sun is Ra. Zraido is the powers of the ray, which is actually hotter. The further you get away from the sun, the hotter the rays of the sun are. That's the masculine. So in the moon, the male deity of the moon is Man. That's where we get the word Man from. And yes, you're right. The moon was male. But the feminine aspect of the moon was Iduna. Now, the Germanic people felt it necessary. Well, I shouldn't say felt it necessary. They were following the indigenous understandings of all shamanic paths. It's not just the Germanic people, but the pre-industrial everybody. Where wherever you go, the moon is male and the sun is female. And it doesn't mean that they're stuck in that. It means that's the aspect of the energy that they focused on. And we've switched that around in modern times. It doesn't mean that we're wrong and they're right. It means that we've changed our focus. And so now we focus on the masculine when we worship the sun, and we focus on the feminine when we worship the moon. So you're right, but you have to look at things in total. And again, if you're new to my channel, please go and watch. This is a note to everybody. YouTube wants to keep you distracted. You're just, oh, here's one, there's another. If you really want to learn what I've got to teach, please go onto my channel. I have, I don't know how many, hundreds and hundreds of videos on my YouTube channel that are free, and you'll hear about all this stuff. I'm happy to repeat myself, so don't get upset if you ask me questions I've already answered. I'm happy to answer them. But you owe it to yourself to really go in and binge watch my channel if you're new to this. Okay, so let's move on. Let me see if I see any more questions. Sirius B, question: is it just a coincidence that Idun and Eden sound similar and both involve a certain woman and apples? There's coincidence and then there's etymology. I actually, when it comes to etymology, you're looking at the actual historical root of a sound and of a word and all that. So there's no etymological connection with Idun and Eden. Now, but there's also coincidence. And as I said, sometimes there is divine coincidence. Like there's no coincidence that some words that are completely in different languages and have different meanings have a correspondence when their sounds are the same. That is a coincidence. Sometimes that coincidence lines up, and that's what we call a cognate. Other times it's just a coincidence, and sometimes the coincidences have no connection. In this case, I can't tell you, whatever the coincidence is, but it's that. It's an interesting coincidence. I guess that's all really I can say about it. All right, so again, I'm going to be looking for the questions. So Frater says the moon reflects light as well, right? Yes, the moon reflects the moon. Again, if you're new to my channel, moon means mind. The original word for moon was man. The original word for human being was man. The original word for the first human being in both the Vedic and the Germanic was man. And it means that human beings are the divine mind. We are the moon, meaning we reflect what? The light of the sun. The sun is the representative of the soul. So human beings are the only animals that have mind, the ability to reflect the divinity of the soul, to reflect the soul. Okay? So that is what moon means. Anyways. All right, so again, lots of stuff there. I don't see any more questions, so we'll keep going. I'll do some ads here. First time today I'm going to do some ads, and then I'll see what else I want to say and see if there's any more questions. Okay, so we're back. So I'll check for questions, and then I think I'm just gonna finish up with talking about the mantra again and sharing how to do that. But let me see. I'm looking for. So, Frater, again, yeah, welcome to the channel. I'm assuming you're new. I have touched on this. We've talked about Jupiter and Thor and how it protects us from meteors and that sort of thing. So, please go onto my channel. Please feel free to go onto my channel and look at all of the playlists surrounding Thor and all of that. You'll see that I've covered all of that quite well. So, let's go back and look at the mantra again, and I'll talk about that, and I'll talk about my experience with it, and I'll share with you ways that you can get the most out of that mantra. So let's look at that mantra again. Okay, so I hope that you're able to memorize that or write it down. If not, go back when this is archived. We're going to make it short tonight. This will be a short teaching tonight, so this video will be up tonight very soon, and you'll be able to go and pause it and write it down if you want. Before I continue with that, I'd like to just once again put up the little interesting notes here, so meditate on this a little bit. In terms of the runes, let's start with there. The name, the syllables within her name and the runes, the major runes that correspond with it. So when you are chanting this mantra, what you can visualize, but first off, you don't need to visualize anything. You can if it's fun for you, but if you don't want to, just get lost in the sound. Do whatever gets you in a comfortable mood. But if you choose to visualize it, the first 5 syllables, lang, vang, rang, yang, hang, you can imagine energy coming up from the earth. You can imagine that. Energy coming up through your feet, through the earth, up through the 5 chakras, balancing all of the 5 elements. And then Idunna, you can imagine first E coming down here, Thu, protection, and then Na is just the power of Shakti. So what is literally happening, again, you don't have to feel it, you don't have to visualize it. So people go, I didn't see that, or I didn't feel that, am I doing it wrong? No, you're not doing anything wrong. I'm just telling you what's happening. You can have a completely different experience and still have this happen. Okay. So again, this isn't a quiz. You don't have to do this right. But what's happening again? Lam, Vam, Ram, Yam, Hum is the first 5 chakras, the 5 elements. What it does is it takes power from the crown and it goes down through the spinal column. And then Thu, what Thu does is Thu empowers the aura. It brings energy out and empowers the aura. And then Na is this explosive power of Shakti, of feminine Shakti. It creates. So this is an excellent mantra for if you want to manifest with the mind. So you can chant this, again, you don't have to do any of the visualization I just mentioned. If you want to just chant this mantra while imagining your life. Whoops, something's going on here with the little red dot there. What does that mean? Anyway, I hope you're still there. Okay, I'm still there. It's telling me I got a problem. So until it goes black, I'm not going to worry about it. But I don't know what happened there. So anyway, I will deal with that later. So yeah, I've been having a lot of weird things going on today with this. Anyway, so this is an excellent mantra for manifestation. If you want to use this to just focus on something you'd like to manifest, this is an excellent mantra for that. So let's take a look again, not at the runes, but again, the meaning of her name. I'll sort of wrap things up and see if there are any questions, and then I'll let you guys get on with your night. Okay, so I think that should give you a pretty good idea of where I'm coming from when we're talking about Iduna and what she offers, what her name means energetically, what happens when you speak her name. You know, I wanted to get into the mythology about that, and I can tell that there's something there. You know, when she gets captured by the shape-shifting giant who takes her, and then Loki, you know, turns her into a nut and then takes her back to the gods and all that. There's something there that's talking about Kundalini in the body, but I'm not going to start guessing. I really want to meditate on that and get a clear understanding before I talk about that. So perhaps we'll do that another time. But know that there's something that has to do with the release of the DMT in the pineal gland. That, I'll just leave it at that. That when she is transformed into a nut and taken back to Asgard, that's what that means. It's talking about the nectar of immortality is actually DMT. So while we're on that subject of DMT, a lot of people do come to me and they say, "Hey, I practice, you know, I take DMT or whatever, or I take ayahuasca or blah blah blah," and they want to talk about that. And so let me just be again clear about that. If you really want the power of DMT, my suggestion is to do it naturally. Meaning, don't take any external chemicals, whether they be the chemical itself or whether they be power plants. Power plants have their place, but they should be used very sparingly, because what ends up happening when you take a power plant or when you ingest DMT externally, it literally squeezes the pineal gland like a sponge, and it weakens it, and so it tells the body to shut off production. But when you do things like this mantra, you are actually you are very subtly and very constructively and healingly, if there is such a word, in a healing way, you are asking the pineal gland to release that. And just like in the myth, she has this box that no matter how many apples she takes out, more show up. That's what happens when you do it naturally internally. By the way, that's why the Vedics and the Taoists stopped using power plants. Originally they did. The Soma in the Vedic was a power plant mixture, and the Taoists used to use other kinds of power plants. They stopped doing it. They stopped doing it because they discovered how to do it internally. While I'm on the subject, I can tell you this combination will probably be the most tasty combination of energy work if you combine this mantra with this practice. It will be like drinking the ambrosial nectar. So for those of you who are not familiar with that, if you really want to get the power of life force energy, the best thing I can recommend is to go to qigong.thunderwizard.com. That's QIGONG.thunderwizard.com. If you combine this mantra with that practice, like I said, you will be filled, you will get high, you'll get very high off of that. And there will be no negative side effects. Again, you can use that with other mantras and things like that, and you still have a lot of intense energy, but you know, some of them you have to be careful with. This one, you don't have to be careful with. You can also, if you don't want to go there, you can just simply go onto my thunderwizard.com YouTube channel and go to the playlists of Qigong. Practice any of those Qigong and do it with this. So while we're on that subject, here's what I would suggest doing. Pick whatever Qigong practice that you'd like to use and do that for however long you would like to do it, whether it's just a few minutes or some people want to do it for an hour. I don't really care. And then chant this mantra. Sit comfortably, and if you don't have if you don't know where your moon is placed in your chart, which will tell you which direction to face and what element to use, if you don't have that from me, don't worry about it. Sit facing the northwest. That is the direction of the moon. It is the direction of the ancestral masters, the realm of the elves. Sit facing the northwest, or if you're outside, you can sit facing the moon. It doesn't matter. But that's what I would do. Sit facing the northwest after doing your Qigong, and then chant Lam Vam Ram Yam Ham Iduna Ya Nama. Then when you're done, take your hands, place it over your navel center, and just breathe through the nose long and deep, because that will ground all of the energies into your navel center. Your navel center is the shipping center. That's the port. That's where all the ships come in, you know, and unload all of their cargo. That's where you take in and refine all of the life force energy. Your navel center then will refine all of that life force energy, that chi power, and then it will send it to all of the meridians as needed. So it's important whenever you do energy work, you have to close down. You have to either do the self-massage. If you don't know what that is, then just simply take your hands, place them over your navel, and breathe long and deep until you feel yourself grounded. Now, Iduna is pretty grounding in and of herself, so she's pretty safe. But again, it's always good to ground. So that's my ritual for you tonight. Do Qigong, any Qigong work that you want. Face northwest and chant, face northwest and chant Lam Vam Ram Yam Ham Iduna Ya Nama. And then breathe long and deep with your hands over your navel and ground. If you want to really know how to worship the moon, for you, you need to get a Vedic astrological chart from me. So for that, go to astrology.thunderwizard.com. Then I can tell you exactly where your moon is. Now, Vedic is not the same as Western. So just because you know what your Western chart is, the Vedic is very likely going to be different. So this is the science that I'm working from. So in order to know which direction the moon wants you to face and which element, in other words, whether it's fire or whether it's a libation or whether it's incense or whether it's food or whether it is using an idol. This is all in your chart. Like I said, I told you what mine is. In my chart, I'm a Leo, and moon is in Leo, so that means that the moon wants me to face east and light a candle so that it can get the most that it wants for me. For you, it might be different. That's why if you don't know, just simply face northwest and chant, or simply go out under the moon and chant. So, there's that. I think I've covered all of the important information that I need to cover. Let me see if there are any questions here. Have I ever trained with Mantak Chia? I haven't trained with Mantak Chia personally, but I did use his book for years. A lot of his stuff is crap, by the way. But that first book that he has, that first one that came out, I forget, it has the picture of the Earth and the microcosmic orbit and all that. That is a great book. That's a great book, and so a lot of my stuff I come from it. Let's see. Have I ever heard references to Germanic lore mentioning wheels in the hands? I haven't. Um, nope, I haven't heard any of that. So I don't have any. I don't have anything for you. The one thing that I have seen, well, I've seen a lot of things. I talk about how Thor teaches qigong. We might as well talk about this while we're on the subject. As you know, Thor has to wear a belt. And if he doesn't wear his belt, his power goes down by 50%. He also has to wear iron gloves in order to pick up the hammer. So, what does that tell you? Now, as somebody who's trained in other practices for many years, practices that have an unbroken connection into prehistory, one of the things that will tell you is that first and foremost, as you know, the navel center is the power. And what do Qigong masters and Kung Fu masters do? They wear a big sash around their midsection for that very same reason, because it protects the adrenals and the kidneys, which are organs that are very important for creating qi in the body, life force energy. So Thor is telling people in that they, when they're doing energy work, they need to protect and empower the navel center and the kidneys and the adrenals. That's why, by the way, if you do qigong, it's not a good idea to drink coffee. Coffee is very bad for the adrenal glands and the kidneys, so you're kind of undercutting yourself. I'm sorry. I used to drink coffee. I was addicted to it. It was very hard to quit, but so things, and one of the easiest ways, if you want to do qigong and it's cold outside, wrap that part of your body up with a belt. It's one of the reasons I live here in Southern California. It's always warm here most of the time, so I don't have to worry about that. The reason why he has to wear iron gloves is because metal conducts electricity. So what he's saying is that when you do your practice, in order to move energy out of the hands have to be able to conduct energy. So the metal is a symbol of his hands being able to conduct life force energy in order for him to pick up the hammer, which is what he uses to create the lightning. So that's just to give you an idea. If you know where to look in the myths, it'll tell you what all this stuff means. So you're asking me, have I seen anything? One of the things I've seen is in the Havamal. In the beginning, I forget the guy's name, the guy who goes up to the... what is that guy's name? Anyway, in the beginning, there's the guy, just the normal human, and the mortal, and he goes up to the heavens, and he goes to Valhalla. I think it's Valhalla. And he sees the three. Now, as it turns out, what that myth is talking about, it's talking about a meditation for opening what's called the three ones. Within the brain, there are three chambers. Within those chambers are three little deities. You didn't know it, did you? This is how the Taoists become immortal and get all their powers, is that they practice what's called the meditation of the three ones. And they spend years and years and years meditating to be able to get the three gods that are in their head to come out in front of them and then communicate with them. So this myth about this guy going up to Valhalla and seeing the three gods there and talking with them, it's talking about a man who's meditating and who's achieving immortality. While he's there, he sees a guy juggling 7 swords. What is that? I think flaming swords. Is that right? 7 flaming swords. What is that? Those are the 7 chakras of Kundalini. So it's saying that he's opening up these powers. He's opening up the pineal and the pituitary, which is releasing all of this DMT. He's becoming an immortal in that myth. You would never know that if you hadn't gone and trained with people who have all this information. This is one of the things when I looked at it, I went, my ancestors knew the same stuff as those Taoist masters. And it's here in this myth. But unless you know how to unpack that myth, you have no idea what you're looking at. It's just some strange thing. That's important to know. Real mythology is like that. It is even possible that our ancestors were channeled that myth and didn't know what it means. I am telling you what it means. It is telling you how to do the method of the 3 ones. One of these days I'll have to start teaching that. I did that for years myself, but it's a very disciplined thing. Anyway, so bottom line is that mythology does teach you, but you got to know what you're looking at. Most people, they pick it up. If they don't know how to interpret the symbols within it, they'll never figure it out. And that's one of the reasons it's there. Because one of the things that the gods and masters and wizards do is that they hide these teachings within mythology, so that when somebody comes along who's deserving, again, just like the myth of Excalibur, only Arthur is deserving and is able to pull the sword out of the stone. Only those who are deserving and have the knowledge are going to be able to know what that means. Otherwise, it's just going to be this really crazy myth until the gods decide to give the knowledge to somebody and have them find it. So anyway, there you go. How about that? All right, so looks like a lot of stuff coming on here, but I don't know if there's any... yeah, again, Frater, you're asking a lot of questions I've already answered. So again, go on to my channel and watch my videos. Let's see. Mudras do help with mantras, Divine Capacity says. I teach mudras. Go on to my channel and look for the Thurisaj rune mantra, rune mudra mantra. It's all right on there. Again, I know that I really appreciate that people are coming on. I love the fact when I do these live things that YouTube starts throwing people onto my channel. So if you're new, I'm telling you, all the answers are in my videos. Binge watch them. Dagara says, is Hela and or Helda, I think you mean Hulda. Hela and Hulda are related, but they're 2 separate deities. Is Hela and or Hulda the one you were chanting to the Hul breath? Hul breath is for Mother Hulda, or Hole. And that is her seed sound. You want to, if you want to tap directly into Mother Hole, chant the Hul breath. Again, a video on my mantra, H-U-U-L. Thank you for the question. Have you ever tried elemental breathing? I have, and I don't know if you're talking about the Western magical version. I have, and I prefer, there are faster ways to do it. Let me just tell you that. I forget the guy's name, the Western magician who taught the elemental breathing. That stuff works, but it's like driving an 18-wheeler in an obstacle course, and you're better off just getting a motorcycle. So there are better ways to do it than that. But yes, I am familiar with that, if that's what you're talking about. The iron qigong is what we would call external. The internal, the stuff that I teach is called negong, or internal work. I am a martial artist, and I have learned a very, very lethal internal martial art that uses chi, but unlike the stuff that protects you and gives you a really hard, chi, like, coat of mail, what I've learned how to do is to dump energy through things into people. So somebody has one of those like impenetrable shields, I can cut right through it. That's the difference between internal and external. I'm teaching an internal path. So just to let you know. Okay, looking for the questions. I have a question about filchir, the fetch spirits is what you're asking about. I don't have videos about fetch spirits as the main subject. I have written about it a little bit, talked about it a little bit. So you've had experience with that. So I don't have much to say on that because this isn't really the time. But it sounds that is in our animal spirits is part of the Norse shamanic tradition. So really, if somebody wants to do that, all they really have to do, if they really want to learn how to do that, is just do some your basic shamanic work with animal teachers, and that's basically what our ancestors did, what they called the fetch spirit. Yeah, King Gylfi was his name, I think. Okay, there are. All right. So yeah, the three brains. What you're talking about is different. There are actually three little chambers in the head. I'm not talking about the three brains. I'm talking about three little chambers deep in the center of the brain. So this isn't just symbolic of the three brains. There are actually three little chambers in there that there's a bunch of chambers in there, by the way, that stay dormant. Little tiny chambers. And when you know what you're doing, you can open those up. And ideally, what you want to do is you put a deity in them. A little deity comes and lives in there. And what that means is that that's going to kickstart that part of the brain, which will release some hormones and all kinds of other things. That's where you get superpowers from. This isn't just your typical, like the three levels of the brain. This is not that kind of superficial stuff that I'm talking about. But I appreciate what you're saying there. All right, so. Savannah Moore, what can I do to airbend, waterbend, firebend better? I have what I teach. I don't do that. The stuff I do is I fight spirits directly with my bare hands, and I work directly to bring energy into my body to elevate me to another level of existence. While I have done those kinds of things, I've found that that is not that's again, it's like driving an 18-wheeler as opposed to driving a motorcycle. There are, for me, that stuff is fun. It's not really my focus anymore. So there are, but I'm not the guy to teach that. I'm really trying to get people to do some other things. I don't want to downplay it. There's really nothing wrong with it. But in terms of calling on gods for a journey, if you're wanting to have power from a journey, I would recommend instead focusing on a technique. So I teach some of those techniques. I teach on my channel. If you look on my channel, I will show different mudras that will empower all of the elements. If you look on, if you look me up on Amazon, you can go to Celestial Qigong. There's all kinds of mudras in there. I teach one on here called the Thurisaj Rune Mudra. That right there is one of those things that'll give you, really, guys, these are things that I had to spend years getting permission to learn, spend thousands of dollars. I've got them on there for free. That's why nobody does them. Because if I charged $10,000, people would be signing up to learn that. So I sort of throw it out there, and people who are really willing to find it and work with it, those are the ones that are going to get it. So anyway, does everyone have the same gods in their head chambers? Yes. Let me take that back. You don't have them in there yet. Until you get to the point where you open them up, then depending on how you look at it, the god is created in your brain, or a ray of that deity goes and sits in your head. Again, we live in a hologram. So you are the eternal universe. So all of the gods technically live inside of you. So the answer is yes. The short answer is yes. Everybody has the same gods. They're not. I'm not talking about little spirits that are running around like being possessed by a spirit. We're talking about deities that live in the totality of the universe that we are releasing and empowering within us. Okay. All right. So I'm not seeing any more questions here. I think I've walked through. I think I've walked through a lot of the stuff here. Again, I'll just run through. Let me just put them up here at the end so that you know what we're talking about. I'll put the three things that has all the there's two things that has the interesting stuff, and then I'll put the mantra at the end so that you can look at that. And then if there isn't anything else, well, I think I'll call it a night. Okay, so again, the pronunciation of that mantra, the M's are actually NGs, and what I do is I do close my lips when I say the M, but I let the tongue hit the back and the roof of the mouth. So I make that sound, but I do it with my lips closed. So the way I pronounce this mantra is Lam Vam Ram Yam Ham Idunaya Nama. 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 Another, well, gosh, maybe we could just do multiple videos about all the different techniques. So remind me to do that. There's a technique to do it where you can go even deeper with it. For right now, this is just a healing way to empower the aura. And I think it's a very, very healing mantra on so many levels. We'll just leave it at that for now. So unless there's any last minute questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the session for tonight. Okay. Christian Soret says, okay, wait, let me see. Is there another question here? Okay, so Frotter's asking me a question I don't really have an answer to. I'm sorry, I can't answer that. I'm not really an expert in the Egyptian lore, so I can't answer that. Christian Soret says, why does spirit come to you to fight? So you're misunderstanding. Spirit fighting means you fight negative entities. You fight demons. You fight trolls, ghosts. That's and that's a specific practice. I haven't taught it online. It's a martial art. I have to teach it in person. But it's a shamanic martial art that can be used against human beings. I have taken a vow to never use it on human beings because it's too powerful. And when you really learn it on the deep level, you never have to fight a human being again. And barely, I've done it at guys, 250-pound muscly MMA masters, and I just barely tap them, and they crumble to the ground and cry like little girls. So there's just no need to ever do it. But it can be used to clean a space if a space is haunted. But when you just use it for your own personal practice, then what ends up happening is that your vibration goes to a very, very high level. And then you start attracting higher level teachers that come to teach you, and you become a force for healing wherever you go. Your cells get a very high vibration. Listen, there's no coincidence that at 54 years of age, when I shave off all my gray hair, it's kind of hard to tell how old I am. That's why I did that stuff for decades, and I was celibate for 6.5 years. This is what spirit fighting is. I only teach it in person, but if you want to get the closest to spirit fighting that you can get, which is celestial qigong, go to qigong.thunderwizard.com, qigong.thunderwizard.com. That is a good introduction to the spirit fighting energy, and it will do all those same things, and we have mudras and all that kind of stuff, which will open all that stuff up. So those are the techniques. So Alicia Cole, yes, those people want my techniques. You can also go on my channel, search all my qigong videos, search for the mudras, put some time into it and look for it. It's on there. And know when you see things like the Thurisaj rune mantra, mudra mantra, know that that mudra is one of those secret techniques that was never supposed to get out to the public. One of those things that if I wanted to, I could charge $10,000, and people from all over the world, if they knew what it was, would come and train with me. I don't do that. It's out there for free. So put some time and effort into my channel. By the way, if you really want to support this channel, the best thing you can do is to go on to thunderwizard.com, sign up at the $25 level or above. $25 a month will get you free videos. I'm a little behind this month, but I put one up every week. And people complain about I don't have the money. Listen, if you can't afford $25, then we need to talk. Something's really wrong, because I know you're spending more on phones and cars and all that other stuff. But that's the best way to support this channel, is to go on and subscribe at $25 and above. For those that want to work with me, anybody who gets a reading from me also, that's really helpful for me. And again, I'm giving that out for cheap. One person just recently tried to get in the back door and get a cheap, and pay like, almost nothing to get they were trying to cheat me. But just know that even when, you're paying full price that I give for these things, just know that that stuff is really, you're not going to find this stuff anywhere else. I would be well within my rights to charge more than I do. So it's well worth it. I'll just say that. I'll leave it with that. Anyway, so yeah, Alicia's right. If you can't afford the 25, then do the 108. She's right, because when you work with me personally, you're going to get something out of it. It's worth it. It's just the way it is. Okay, so that's all. I don't think I have anything more to say tonight. But thank you so much. We'll come back. I think there's more to talk about with Iduna. I think there's a lot. I think there's remind me to talk about a higher level technique of chanting this and getting more of her very wonderful, beautiful, powerful healing energy into our minds and our souls and our bodies. So that's it for now, my friends. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, my friends, my mothers, my sisters, my brothers, my uncles, my fathers, my grandparents, all of those of you who allow me to bring this to you. You have no idea how much you help me. I will talk to you very soon. May the healing power of Iduna be with you all.